Hello, honors pre-calculus students. Today's learning target is to graph this function g, which is 4 secant 5x plus pi over 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out the 5. So it'll be 5 times x plus pi over 10. And remember, the secant and cosine are reciprocals, so I'm going to consider this graph 4 cosine 5 times x plus pi over 10. And I'm going to graph that green function. So for the cosine graph, I know the period is 2 pi over 5. So I'm going to mark the period. I'll cut that in half, cut that in half. So we have 1 pi over 10, 2 pi over 10, 3 pi over 10, 4 pi over 10, this would be 5 pi over 10. And then I'm going to go to the left. And negative 5 pi over 10 is the same as pi over 2. We could reduce those fractions. So now in order to graph that cosine, I can see that the amplitude is 4. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the cosine usually would start, I'm going to put some highlighted yellow. So the cosine would usually start at that yellow spot, go down to negative pi over 10. So the cosine curve would usually be at those yellow highlighted spaces. But there's a shift, and that shift here, I'm going to highlight it in pink. That shift is going to be left pi over 10. So instead of being at the yellow dots, I'm going to shift everything over pi over 10, and you can see I'm putting these red dots. So every point is going to be shifted over. So I'm going to draw in dotted green that cosine graph. And I'm going to erase those yellow highlighted dots to avoid some confusion. And I may have just erased the axes there. So if I wanted to graph g of x, which is the secant, well, we know that the mins and maxes are the same, so these big blue dots are going to be identical. Where the cosine graph hits the sinusoidal axes are asymptotes, so there's an asymptote on the y-axis. There's another asymptote at pi over 5. There's another asymptote at negative pi over 5. And negative 2 pi over 5. And then in between are U-shaped. So I'm going to draw this graph here. And what I just drew here in red is g of x.